Well, I thought we could get back to a theme and a best practice for this week. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Chris. Hi, Kat. And a lot of you have been through this process, but I think it was, we're at a point where we've been emphasizing this identity work with people. And I thought it would be good to share with this group because I don't think we've done that. So I'm going to just open up, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to open up a presentation that's like just a few slides that gets this down. Hang on a minute. There we go. So this is the second part of the Public Image Works method, which is our approach to, it's a method to really help people kind of build a foundation and make some things solidified so you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. I think a lot of the times when we're working in communications and promotion, part of the excitement is that we have new things to share, we can be creative with things, we can think that anything new needs a new creative kind of energy around it, which is true. And at the same time, I think we can sometimes apply that too much to the things that are just like core to help outside audiences connect with what it is that is going to be evergreen all the time, no matter which program you're doing, no matter what your strategic plan is for the year, or no matter what's happening in the world. So when something seems uncertain, there are still some things that are really core to you, and that's what your identity is. So the most important thing about this concept, I'm getting some background noise somewhere. Chris, I'm gonna, can you mute? Yeah.
It's me. I can't.
Oh, okay. You can't mute? There you go. Cool. So I think one of the things that we try to emphasize a little bit differently than other folks that might be more in traditional like branding and marketing is that identity, like being able to actually show your real identity and convey your true like purpose and all of those things that you're trying to do is actually the best thing for your public image. A lot of the time, especially in traditional marketing, it's like, well, you have to package, you have to like pitch your story a certain way for certain audiences, and you need to like alter things in order to like grab them and get attention and to like sell them something. And I think some of that relates to the work that we do as nonprofits or artists, but not all of it. The idea of catching attention, the idea of really relating to people directly, that is the same, but the idea that you have to like concoct marketing and branding that's like designed to like convince people of your value, that's not the same. That works for new product development when people have never tasted a new flavor of a soda or something, but we're not soda. So that's why I use the word identity instead of brand, because an identity is really something that comes from deep within and is always evergreen. So that is basically this idea that you're not a brand and that you're really the unique mix of what you're trying to do and the passion that you have behind it. Either it's a vision or just your inspiration. Like if you feel like you get up in the morning and you are doing something because you want to or you feel called to, and you have a passion to do it and you want to make an impact in the world, you have some form of identity. So amplifying that it lets you be authentic as opposed to like trying to remember like, ooh, I'm supposed to put on this version of me and this version of me and this version of me. You don't have to do that. You just need to make sure that you're amplifying the key points in relation to others. And that's good for your public image. So identity is a combination of three things. the very first thing is how you understand yourself. And this is the most important part of the process. And people quickly leap over that because it can be uncomfortable, into number two. And number two is how others like are relating to you and understand you. And if you don't have a handle on what you think you're doing and why you're doing it, and what is the idea and the motivation and the vision, then it doesn't matter how other people see you and understand you or feedback to you what it is that they want. If you don't have that internal understanding, then you're actually not doing work that is like mission driven or inspiration driven. If you're only talking about what do our audiences need, then you're like in a service relationship, and that's different than bringing what you have into a collaborative situation where you're exchanging with an audience. So
And
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Grace says she's been waiting in the waiting room for a while.
oh no,
I don't know if you saw that.
it didn't beep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make sure that this is set up. It didn't play the sound. Okay. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to back up. The sound didn't ding when you came into the waiting room, so I'm sorry about that. So I'll go back. And I am recording this. You can always check this out on our blog. But today we're talking about the second part of the Public Image Works method, which is an emphasis on showing your real identity. So identity is not a brand. It is really coming from something much deeper, and it's an evergreen. It's the evergreen part of your work. It's your unique mix of a vision, the passion that you have to keep going, and the way you want to make change in the world, or the way you want to impact the world. That all comes from some sort of like call or responsibility, or it's your job, and doesn't matter. It could be any of those, but that's much more of an identity. And as an organization, you have a mission and you have a vision, and that's identity. And so what I'm going to be talking about today are the ways to look at your identity, is that actually amplifying your real identity as a practice, instead of, oh, I have to like be this for these people and this for these people, and I have to alter my identity for these people. That is not authentic, and it is not really good for your public image. And it comes across as more of like what I was saying before y'all got in was, for marketing, for branding and marketing, some of the things are the same, like telling the truth. Hopefully that is the same in all, whether it's identity or branding or marketing. But the idea of needing to alter your core identity based on like your audience or the needs of your audience, that is not really a best practice. You want to be mindful of your messaging, and you want to be mindful of the calls to action for different audiences and what you might talk about first versus third or fourth. But you don't want to be saying like, well, my identity is different for different audiences. That's actually a lot to juggle if you're not a multinational corporation that has different departments. And like I was saying earlier, that's better for like marketing a new flavor of soda, but not for an organization that has like a track record and a long time position in their field or in their community. So identity is made up of three things: how you understand yourself. And this is the most important thing. And people jump over this all the time. They go right to their audiences. And I think that if you are always going right to what your audience needs, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that that is more of a service industry than a mission-based project or an inspiration-based project. So as an artist, you might be an independent artist that has an inspiration to be doing something. You have your call, you're doing your work, you are trying to work on whatever it is that is currently like inspiring you. If you don't actually take some time to understand what that is, and you're only going right away to what your audience needs to hear, you can't ever really then convey that to your audience. And same for a nonprofit organization, where you have a mission and a vision, and that needs to be clear among all the stakeholders. So this also applies to boards. So does everybody on the board agree with these key things about ourselves? And if you don't know that, then communicating outwardly is going to be harder. So how you understand yourself, how others understand you. So these are like outside audiences. Who's your audience and what are you saying to them? And how are they getting what you are saying? Not just how do they understand you, but how do you want them to understand you? And then number three, the third part of an identity is then how you combine those two things, your internal understanding, your external audience's understandings and needs, and then you combine that into representing yourself through words, visuals, and experiences. So we have 3 tools and practices in the Public Image Works method to get this down on paper and to make sure that it's deeply understood. And typically we recommend that organizations do this at least once a year just to confirm. But if there's a big change in your organization, you might want to go back to your identity core elements and think about and make sure everybody's on the same page about these things. So the first thing is the identity core elements. This is how you figure out how you understand yourself. So what is the vision? And vision is what the world would look like if you achieved your goals. And so your vision might be similar to other people's visions. So at Social Impact, our vision is a healthy, happy, peaceful world that's possible, and where people are boldly communicating their ideas and making them into action. That we share that vision with a lot of other people. Most of you probably want a healthy, happy, peaceful world of some sort, I hope. And it may be that you have a slight variation on that theme, but it joins us in our like bigger movement building. The second thing is values. So core values are key to the success of any organization and any endeavor. And you may have them written out, and you may just have them unspoken and an understanding. I do recommend that every organization have explicitly written out core values, because it's a way for, it's just like, you know, a touchstone for how people need to be reminded sometimes about how we act and how we treat each other and how we go about our work. Core values can also help you when you have tough decisions to make. If you aren't quite sure, if you look back at your core values, it can really help you. It helps me, I know, to make decisions when I look at my core values. The third thing is a unique quality, and this is about really being really what's unique. So this requires stepping back and being really honest about what makes you unique in your community, in your field, in your mission, all of those things. Things like we're the best kept secret in New Jersey is not a unique quality, because a lot of people would say that. We also, you know, we are a community organization that, you know, we're really deeply connected to our community. That is also not a unique quality, because a lot of other people might have that quality too. So it's more about really looking at like, what's that twist? Like, what's that Venn diagram overlap sometimes? Like for us at Social Impact, we identified our unique quality as, we've summed it up into kind of like 2 words, which is like enjoyable activism, which are these things that might seem like incongruous with each other. And that can often be your sweet spot of unique quality, things that feel like they don't go together. Of course, you need to know your mission. And, you know, for the past 10 years or so, it's been recommended that you have a really short mission statement, not those big, long mission statements. Those can be more like kind of like manifestos or big like story, the narrative of your organization, but a mission should be pretty succinct. And then lastly, you need to really understand what vibe you want to get across. Are you serious? Are you fun? Are you welcoming? Are you inclusive? Are you, funny? Are you, um, uh, you know, really scientific? Are you research oriented? None of those are mutually exclusive, but it's good to name it. The second part of the tools that we have for identity work are audience mapping. And this is how others understand you. And for any given audience, you want to understand where they are in their demographic. So that might be their background, their age, their economic level, their education level, where they live, all of that stuff. And then you also want psychographic, because those cross over. Like you could have people from like multiple ages and multiple backgrounds having a common psychographic like characteristic of being open-minded, for example. That's one of the ones that we are looking, we want to work with people that are interested in collaboration and want to learn new things. Thinking about what they need first is a great way to get into the mind of an audience. What they need, what their basic needs are, what motivates them around what you do, and then think about what you want from them. So I want them to sign up. I want them to come to this thing. I want them to donate. But think about what they need, because that's going to help you with your messaging and your connection points. And then through the Public Image Works process, we normally take both of those things and we match up the identity, those elements of your identity, and then what your audience needs, and look at these three things. Your messaging, which includes your name and the language you use to talk about your work, the visual representation of your work, and experiences. So one-on-one, what's it like to come to your events? What's it like to be in a meeting with you? And then also online, your website, your social media. Am I taking these things and putting them and like packaging them in different ways that connect to these things? And is it successful? Is it working? And when you do that, you will see where the holes are and where you need to kind of maybe do a little bit of work to get those things to align with each other, and mostly to align back to your core understanding. So that is what I wanted to share today. I'm going to stop sharing. And we also do have a tool that's an identity review, that core elements tool, that I have not made fully available to everybody yet, but I will post that on our blog post about this. And you can take a look at that tool. But that's what I wanted to share. And I'm also wondering, anybody that's been going through this recently, like I know Kat, we went through this recently, and Chris, you've been going through this too, is like connecting the dots between your internal understanding with outside audiences. I don't know if you want to just like say anything about how that process like was either hard or easy, or has helped or is not helpful or whatever.
Sure, I'm happy to express that it's been very helpful. As I explained to you at one point, it seemed to me like I was this volcano of all the stuff that seemed to be pushed down inside that needed to come out. I'm an independent artist, and so especially in lieu of COVID, I've been having to recreate how I present my mission, my purpose, really re-identify it. And so the structure has been very helpful to me. And for a while, but really it's been a couple of weeks, it took me some time to go through everything that I had written out, put it into the structure that you provided me, and then make some sense of it for me to move forward from that place. I felt like I was stuck. And yesterday I actually had an epiphany, and all the pieces began to fall into place, believe it or not. Like I needed to know, how do I bring this forward to this particular teacher that I'm going to start working with at the beginning of the school year, but I want to make this available for other teachers. And because this one teacher and I worked together, she already had a general understanding of my concept. But I needed to be able to break it down so that I could even show her the steps that we need to take to achieve our ultimate objective, and then be able to relay this information to other teachers.
Yeah.
And yesterday, finally, I had the epiphany of how to put it down, and it came pouring out of me, and I was able to write it out. And
Excellent.
so I'm going to be talking to her today, and I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad to hear that. And I can hear it in your voice. It's like you're ready to get that out there. And what you talked about was, I think, really important, that we sometimes know that other people know what we do or what we're talking about, but we are really the keepers and the holders of that information, that core identity. And so we always have to be kind of reinforcing it with people, even if we think they know. And one great way that you did that was thinking about, like, well, if she had to describe that to another teacher, would she be able to do that? And are we as a team going to be able to go into other meetings where it will not be, where she'll totally have it? I love that. And from an organizational standpoint, for organizations, this can apply to your ambassadors for your organization, your board, other people, volunteers, that, you know, do they have an understanding, at least the basic understanding of that deep core stuff? So you don't have to keep like reinforcing it, but also so they don't like get stuck when they're talking to other people about it. Chris, did you want to share any of your experience? Oh, you're muted. Can I? There you go.
Hi. So I'm Chris Campbell, and I'm an artist, and that's my stuff.
Nice.
I would sum it up with I'm ready. Like, working with Public Image Works and going through the process, there was definitely, it was reaffirming to hear what I did have right, and then to have clarity on what was missing, because the missing part is overwhelming. So then to have like real clear, like this needs to get done, this needs to end in a path for that. And then now as everything's growing exponentially fast and I start losing my breath sometimes, I'm like, okay, just go to the promotion tool, put a date on it. So it's and then I'm ready.
Nice. Yeah, and you pointed out something that I think is good too, is reinforcing what you already know. We all need that. Like, we all need to sit down and say, like, oh gosh, I got to answer this question about like what my unique quality is. And then once you start putting it down, you're like, yeah, that is what I am. Yeah, that is what we are. This is awesome. Like, we're good. And it can also reveal those holes, but can give you that boost that the rest of the world isn't going to give you all the time, or rarely, actually. So that's a good point. What other ways do people have? So I will share these tools, but are there other ways that people tap back into their, you know, that they make sure that, or do you want to talk about kind of that, that challenge that I was talking about at the beginning, where you think, well, different audiences need to hear different things. Like, do you ever have a problem, like, being able to share your real identity because you're afraid it's not gonna, like, it's gonna get in the way? And what do you do about that?
Well,
Kristen's got some stuff to say.
I get, well, one, I, you know, this is interesting because both as an artist and as someone who runs an organization, it just hits home a lot. And I know you and I have had conversations about this. One thing that I find really interesting about having a process and steps is that gives you permission to ask questions that maybe you don't ask yourself. And so I think for anyone who has a passion for something, and as an artist, and to think of like, well, give yourself permission to picture exactly what you want. I think you and us do it a lot with your business, where you give yourself the permission to dream and to vision it. And it's a practice, I think. It's also something that it's really a practice of saying, you know, I have friends who, I mean, particularly women struggle with giving themselves permission. It's like we almost wait for someone else to give us the cue. It's true. Think about
It
it.
is. No, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, so true.
You know, it's like we are like, I find this with some of my female artist friends. They tend to wait for the cue to move forward or to be okay or the approval, where especially as the more you know, you might put more filters and more hesitation to moving forward. And that's sort of the bravado of youth that doesn't know so much and sort of is a little unfiltered and can go. So I just want to say that. And then in terms of an organization, what's interesting, I think you hit a really good point earlier on in terms of how does perhaps a founding director, a creative director see the organization versus an executive director, or how a board sees an organization, or the staff sees the organization, or your constituents. That's really complicated sometimes with depending on the complexity of the mission. For example, Peters Valley serves a pretty broad mission and in multiple ways, accomplishes the work in multiple ways, and therefore there can be, I think, some pretty big differences in how people are seeing.
So you think that everybody would kind of be on the same page of those big categories, of those 5 big categories of like our vision, our unique quality, our mission, our vibe, but where it would get tricky is like how?
Well, I think because we've done the work of strategic planning, we've got clarity around those issues. I think before we did that, it was probably less. So the importance of going through this kind of identity is you have to do that in order to get to your strategy and to set your goals. So it's not just about communication.
Right.
Like what you are sharing with us is not just necessary in order to communicate. It's actually necessary in order to achieve the work of
To
your
function. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have core values, if you don't have a mission and you don't have a compass and a roadmap, then you can't really, you know, the Alliance of Artists Communities sent out an email yesterday, the director did, about residencies and how organizations are really struggling to shift right now, and all the challenges of artist residencies now having funding for them, and how they might be called out as being really of privilege, and what do you do to change that? So that was the subject. But they talked about, are you building the plane while flying it? Are you flying the plane while you're building it?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And they use that metaphor. And to some degree, I think nonprofits do a little bit of that.
You have
especially
to.
when
Yeah.
you're starting to do that. But one of the points that the director made was the problem of flying the plane while you're building it is that maybe you're only serving yourself in the process. Maybe you're only thinking about saving yourself or serving yourself. And
Interesting.
so I thought, well, because if something goes wrong, how are you, so it makes me think that the importance of having the core value, like building the plane, is this issue of like, where's your mission? Who
Yep.
are you? What are you trying to do? And then having that in place to guide the decision making and the communication. But I think the part that's really critical here, and where I know you've helped us very much, is, but what does your audience, how do they see you, and what do they need from you? I think that's been really important. And I think that as an artist who's made work that I think will be sellable and work that's authentically mine. It's really interesting how when I do tap into the really authentic self, people are attracted to that.
Yeah.
Then the work that's made because, oh, this is a good price point, it's sellable. Not to say that, you know, selling a mug you can do, but
Yeah, all of that helps, but yeah.
you know, it helps pay the bills. There's a balance, but there is something about the, I mean, it's almost like magical energy that you can see that people are just drawn to that. Like they'll
Right.
walk in the room and go right for that piece that you poured your heart into.
Yeah,
And,
the love, the like energy, the love, the God, whatever it is that you want, you know, however you call that, and understand that it's like literally in a piece or in your work or in your ability to speak, like when you're out there doing public speaking. You know, I think carrying that, everybody does that really well. I think in written form also. And I know, Brandy, you've got some speaking engagements coming up. But you always bring it. You always are exuding this, like, everybody at Subculture is always exuding this, like, deep connection to whatever that is that you're bringing and that you understand you're doing there. It always comes through. So,
Thank you.
but even
Wish me
that,
luck.
yeah. I mean, what's your? I saw something promoted. I saw Carlton promoted something. What is coming up for you?
So it is a webinar with Daisa Enterprises and the Wallace Center, talking about arts and culture in relation to improving food and health systems.
Right. And that's that sweet spot I was talking about, where people are like, arts and culture, food, what? Like,
Right.
and you're the person that's putting that together. You're that like arts integration person, cultural integration person. And nobody's
Yeah.
gonna necessarily like even introduce you the right way, you know? Like,
Right. I think that we as an organization, are always, working to really give a clear message about the work that we do. And I think, as it becomes more common language and understanding about just our relation to food and culture and art, you can see, and it's really kind of sometimes being in space and seeing it in action, and how we can portray that when we can't actually physically be in space together. When you do, then it all begins to come together, and it feels seamless, more seamless than it tends to sound. So, so we're talking about identity and messaging. It's a really interesting that you even pull and point to us for that, because it's something that we're refining all the time. And just like you were saying, Kristen, I think it was Lisa that from AAC. It's like, I definitely feel like we're the ones that are the building the plane while flying it.
but I think everybody here, like Jean is here, who hasn't been in our group along the way to many of these. She's been to a couple, but she's at the Agile Learning Center, which is a school that a bunch of us parents started here in Philadelphia, but it's a very specific philosophy of self-directed education and being able to not just tell the story of something that's unusual for people, like self-directed education, what is that? But actually like making sure that every single communication is reinforcing the core value of, freedom and self-direction and like being in community and all of that. I think that that's something that, Jean, you've really done a great job of like making sure that it always is coming back to the core reason for the thing, and not the, like Kristen, you were saying, not the like self-preservation, like, oh, are we going to be able to keep our school open? But we have to also do this core thing that we're here to do. And I think everybody here has some variation on that, like the Myrna Loy is it's a community cultural center, but it's also, coming from, it's named after somebody that had like some values about like film and community and education and arts and all of that. So you have to keep that, even if you don't ever talk about Myrna Loy. It's in there. It's cool. I put a link in the chat to a copy of the form that we use. And again, all of these are kind of like you're getting the inside scoop, and many of you have done these. But this is our, I just want to pull it up so you can see it. But this is our method document, the tool that we use for it. And you can make a copy, and then like it should bring you to a thing that asks you if you want to make a copy. And then if you make it a copy of it, it'll just dump it in your own Google Docs. And it just takes you through and asks you those questions. And it's a good exercise to do with boards and staff. I think especially around this time where things are, I think one misconception I'm seeing a lot out there is that pivot somehow is suddenly meaning like pivot entire purpose and like reason for being. And that seems a little bit extreme to me. Like pivot, I think pivot should be like the core is still there and you're pivoting around the core, not you're like, you're not like doing both at the same time and changing what your core is. It might be a time to scrap everything and start over, but it doesn't seem like it. Doesn't feel like that would be prudent. So this document like goes through those things, but it also, one of the things I wanted to point out is like understanding the nuances, and this is something, Kristen, you were alluding to, and you all do really well, is that you have nuances between the ways that you deliver your mission, but you don't ever, it doesn't ever feel like it's like disconnected. So the fact that there's the craft fair, and that's a huge thing that you do, and that you also have workshops, and that you might have your open house every year, and that you have a campus, like all of those things are connected. But one thing you can do is, oh shoot, it still says the wrong thing here. I gotta fix that. Is you do your vision for the organization, and then if you have different programs that might have nuances of it, that you are explicit about those. So at Social Impact, we have Design for Social Impact, which is our umbrella, and then we have Social Impact Studios, which is the hub, creative hub for removing barriers for communication and action. And then we have Public Image Works, which is the method and a curriculum for like helping people plan and have tools for doing what they're doing around bold ideas and action. And then we have Posters for the People, which is a very specific project to document the posters from the New Deal in the 1930s, and you know, have an exhibit, and I'm like the expert on that topic. So those are all part of Design for Social Impact's vision of a healthy, happy, peaceful world where people are using their voice and their creativity to push bold ideas into action out into the social like strata. But each one of those has a slightly different variation of a vision, and that's I found helpful to have those nuances clear. And I'm
I have a question. Oh,
yeah, go ahead. I'm going to change
hi.
this error so you can have the right form.
Okay.
So go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. This is Annie. Just in case anyone was new when I was introducing myself. So I work with, you know, a philanthropic organization that supports media making, especially like community media making. And one thing that I was very like kind of interested in, because we're very new, and so as we are sort of like forging our identity, and you sort of mentioned like staying, like trying to keep away from cliches of like being rooted in the community, like even if you are, but finding like a more nuanced way to say that. And a question I had was, you know, so as a philanthropy, I guess it's not very common for philanthropic organizations to be like truly like kind of connected with the community and reflect the community in terms of like their staff and their board. And so I'm like, is that cliche to, I guess, have that in our messaging, since
No.
that's not common in our in our sector.
In your field, yeah. So there's
Yeah.
two things I wanted to clarify and answer your question through this clarification. So the first thing is that there is a distinction between cliche in like public image, like promotional language, and like saying, you know, we're the best kept secret in a slogan. That is very cliche. And a lot of people might say that, and that might not get across what you want to get across. The thing that I was talking about was actually like identifying your unique quality, like really knowing what makes you different from other people in your field who might share your vision. Or might share your vision. Like they might be in your field or they might also share your vision. So at Social Impact, our vision is a healthy, happy, peaceful world. We share that with a lot of people. What makes us unique is, okay, we're applying design skills and principles to that healthy, happy, peaceful world. Okay, is that really unique? No, there are other people who apply design. Like there's a whole like social design, like, you know, practice. So is that really unique? No. What makes us really unique is that we are, you know, like scrappy, you can do it, we can roll up our sleeves with the right ingenuity, we can get anything done. That is one of our, like, I think, like unique characteristics is that we really honestly, like, don't say no. And it gets us into trouble, but we are like, we can do it, we can do it. And then there's other things that make us unique. Like I'm me. Every person in the organization is unique. So I'm something that makes our organization unique. All of our staff is something that makes us unique. But the thing you just touched on is exactly what I think is a unique quality. If you're in your field as philanthropists, you don't typically engage at the grassroots level or in that kind of hands-on approach or however you described it. That is coming to you as feeling like something that's different, and that does sound like a unique quality to me.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That's very
helpful. Did that all make sense?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't only about like how you talk about yourself, but it's like really, what do you feel is like, what do you have pride about? You know, being like, yeah, we do this differently and better. Maybe not better, but we do this differently, and it's part of who we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, I updated that. So you can get a copy of that. Please don't share that around with a lot of people because that is our method, and you know, it's open for folks who show up here and are connected. Also because it's in context. Like that form by itself doesn't mean anything if we haven't had the conversation. So what other things did people want to talk about today? Did anybody have any specific like communication stuff that wasn't related to identity or thoughts or things that are happening now based on kind of what's happening in the world? It seems like the school equation is really affecting people's lives these days, like how school's going to happen. And as a result, how people go back to work or don't go back to work or work from home. And that might be, that feels like something that's kind of affecting this like hurry up and wait kind of vibe out there right now. And some people go to school, like in Mississippi, you might already be normally going back to school at this time, right?
Yes. Yeah. We're usually in school. And actually, we've had a couple of schools start far north of us, but yeah, and that's not going so well as everybody sees.
Yeah. But I think we're kind of in the back to school like time of year, and those of us in the Northeast typically aren't. It's not till after Labor Day that our brain shifts. Like, okay, now we're in a different season. But that's kind of a good, like, are you finding that people are feeling just, is it the same? Is it saturation is everybody reached their like COVID like saturation point, or are people like, oh, it's feeling like we need to start planning the next wave?
For Peters Valley, we're right now we're working on next year, and there's a lot of unknowns, but there's things that we're going to need to communicate out. And I think what you pointed out, sort of pivoting as something on the core, as opposed to like mission creep or changing everything about what you do or your identity. It's been an interesting time, I think, with our team, as we have suddenly shifted to virtual programming, and we're going to have a virtual craft fair, which is a pretty innovative idea, right? Where because our mission is to help artists practice their crafts, and we start from that point, like, well, we could have just canceled and not done anything at all, but okay, we have a mission about the learning, the appreciation, and the practice of fine craft. So what are the ways that we can serve that mission now and have impact during this time with the tools we have available? So in that sense, reassuring everyone that we're not going away. We are about the experience, but right now the experience has to be a virtual one. And it's going to be interesting, I think, to communicate to people how we're planning for the future year. And typically when you're communicating something, you want to be really clear. This is it. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. Register now.
Right.
Come. Right. But we're going to, what's going to be interesting is like, and how do we communicate that our consumer or our client is going to also have to commit to something, right? To commit to COVID-19 cautions, limiting exposure. How are you going to understand that? Do we need to say like, hey, this is subject to change, or, like all the things that obviously are subject to change.
That's a really interesting point. I haven't even thought about the like subject to change asterisk. Like, who doesn't know that everything is subject to change? But it's a good point.
Well, we live in a culture where, like, even when they have a coupon, they have to write all the reasons why this coupon works this way. I mean, we live in a culture that's got like, employees of this company cannot play this game, whatever it is. I mean, we just have, car radio advertisements where they have the limited warranty,
Yeah, pharmaceutical, like advertising. Yeah. How have you done that at the Myrna Loy? Because I know that you were dealing with like potentially having people like come in. You had people in, we're doing social distancing. It may be a little bit different in your community, but probably not. I mean, it's pretty conservative out there. Like, did you have people that like, would only the type of people who would wear a mask come to the Myrna Loy anyway, so you didn't really have to deal with it? Or did you put it in your like promotional stuff, like you have to wear a mask, or this is subject to change, or any of that?
Yeah, I mean, the pivot point, it seems like we are sometimes building the plane, but we still show movies, and we came up with a different way to, engage our audience. We're doing this Throwback Thursday. So it's movies that we've shown, previously that were real popular. I mean, and the numbers aren't great, but it's another way to get people in the Myrna. And a lot of people are wigged out that, we're not necessarily open, but we're making it as safe as possible, masks, social distancing. So a new thing is we're going to do, it's called the Myrna Stage, and my organization is the Myrna Loy. So we're doing the Myrna Stage, and I know everybody else is doing the, concerts, online concerts, but it's something that we're crafting and making sure that it's really a good quality experience. So we're highlighting local artists, local musicians, having like a little interview after. It's kind of like a, poor man's Austin City Limits kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's kind of something that we're trying to do and do it
And
well.
and I think one of the things I heard you say, Kristen, and I wonder about if this is the case at the Myrna or any other places, like even at the um, like the ALC school, where you need people to commit to something in order to actually do it versus you're going to do it regardless. And, who comes is like the proportion of that. Yeah. Like at the Myrna Loy, are you doing it regardless or is it like dependent on ticket sales?
Well, we're doing it regardless, but I think like doing the online performances, I mean, that's a different beast. So, I mean, people can do it at home, worldwide. You don't necessarily have to physically be at the theater, but so we're trying to come up with people to invite to the Myrna. So yeah, I mean, it is sometimes from day to day, is this going to get shut down? Are we going to pay our bills? I mean, everybody's in that same.
Because Kristen, what I was thinking while you were talking was like the silver lining of all of that is that the thing that we always, all of our organizations, that we want to be seen as a valued asset in our community. Whatever that community is, we want to be seen as something that is, I'm not going to use the word essential, but essentially like is valuable and needed. Like that's the ultimate goal of our development work, of fundraising work. It's not just do we stay open to do the things we do, but do you see us as somebody that does all of this stuff? So that's kind of the silver lining of it. But on the other hand, what I heard you saying, and must be really difficult, is like getting commitments out of audiences. And Kristen, for what you were talking about, is like if they don't commit, then you can't do your programming, and how do you communicate that?
I guess that's it. Like we shifted to doing a virtual craft fair, and so we had to have a certain number of artists in order to make that happen, right? So it's been a real like communicating. I mean, Brienne can talk about this, communicating the collaboration aspect of it. Like, okay, we now need to build this together.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want the restaurant to stay open post COVID, then you better order takeout from them,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the you need to order takeout in order to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
And when we've done all sorts of programming that is free to the public, and the artists are freely giving their time, and so we're leveraging the infrastructure that we have, right, to promote artists and provide some cultural reprieve for people and some entertainment, some inspiration, which is what we do. It's really core to the mission, but it doesn't pay the bills.
Right. And I think that this example, like that particular example, I do think it was like an interesting overlap. Like Brienne, you were doing what organizers have to do all the time. It's like, I'm on the phone, like that's sometimes like what a community organization does, right? Like if they're trying to, save a school or whatever. And that creates a different and deeper, and what I heard you saying before, Brienne, was like, even though it was like of course it's a ton of work, it's just the nature of that work. But also I think I heard you saying you were kind of like it was like deeper, like you were having a deeper connection to people than you had before. Did I mishear that?
No, and not only that, but when you think about your mission, right? Like your position in your community, in your field. Like at least with craft shows now, right? A lot of craft shows don't know what to do. They don't know how to pivot, and they're not handling it appropriately. They're not thinking about artists. They're not giving money back, right? And they're building negative reputations. By doing all the work that we're doing, we're like, it's like kind of even just beyond like building this good reputation. It's like I mean, we're getting testimonials from people of like just how thoughtful we are, how considerate of artists we are, like all of that stuff. It doesn't go unnoticed. And what they also notice with that is like, wow, it takes a ton of work to do this. And clearly you are passionate and committed that you want to do that. And then, you know, like me as an individual getting that feedback then becomes, I am a representative of the organization. And so then the organization is built upon people, community members, whether it's employees or board members, or even people that participate, people that are passionate and committed about the cause.
Yeah.
So it has all of those kinds of effects. It's just, there's just like there's a lot of different effects that maybe you didn't anticipate. And then it goes, okay, I see why I'm doing all this really hard work, you know, and having all this stress.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's part of the work. I think it's part of engagement, the difference between engagement and promotion.
Yeah, and I think that we just have an opportunity now that we didn't have before, because all bets are off and the best laid plans have had to be put on pause, that we have an opportunity to try things that maybe we wouldn't have had time to even think about, or the staffing hours, because, you know, the normal day-to-day. So I think that, you know, when we come out of this, which we will come out of it, I think we're going to have some new ways, some deeper relationships, some new ways to communicate. And, you know, the idea that we can communicate more authentically is already happening.
Yeah.
I think it's already happening because we've been thinking about, well, what do people need from us and what do we need from them? And we've actually been communicating that way.
Yeah. And also just like reality, like this is real, like we're closing, or we're not doing this program now, or we can't do this right now, and this is our alternative. This is what we got. and in many ways that attracts the people that really want that, you know. A long time ago, I learned from Carlton, who comes is, and you know, like the people that show up, the people that are actually there doing it. But if they don't know, like that's the part that is the extra work that you were talking about, Brianne, and that organizing work and that authentic identity. If they don't know about it, then you might not get that pool of people. And now that we have this like global opportunity, literally, there's a lot that can be done with that. Cool. All righty. Well, it's good to see everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the earlier hour, those that are not on East Coast time zones. So I hope you have a good rest of your week. We have our Embodying Anti-Racism in Communication and Action call tomorrow. And I posted that link, so go ahead and get those tools. I'll also be putting up a blog post. So I'll see you all soon.
Right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.